listening to the Metal Command Podcast.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Metal Command Podcast. Tony here with you, and today I'm here to talk about the new Judas Priest, The Sinner Rides Again, out on Napalm Records. An absolutely phenomenal record, and I'm here to talk about that. I'm going to review the record, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame snub of Tim Ripper Owens, because for those of you that may or may not know, Judas Priest was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, in my opinion, is a trash entity in a sense. I don't really have any real respect for it, but because many of you out there, for whatever reason, give this institution credibility, I'm going to talk about it because Tim being left out of not only being inducted into the Hall of Fame, the guy that sang in the band for, close to 10 years, and the band was nominated for a Grammy while he was in the band, but I'll get to that later. I'm going to rant a little bit about that because I have some issues with that and the fact that the band has tried to basically erase this guy's history for whatever reason. But anyhow, let's talk about this album in particular, because there was a previous Judas Priest album, which I thought was very, very good. But I got to be honest with you, this one, no disrespect to the previous album, but this one blows it away. It really does. From the songwriting perspective, from the performance perspective of the guys playing on this record, and of course, I think the production is a lot better than the first Judas Priest album. And, you would expect that because bands always look to improve and get better. And when you get a lineup like that together, I know Tim played with Judas Priest, but that was a long time ago. And it does take some time to grow as a band, right? I mean, when you get together with some new guys, you grow musically, you grow together as people when you start working with each other, either for the first time or for the first time in a long time. And I really feel that Judas Priest, this album is a huge improvement over the previous album. The previous album was also very good, but this one is absolutely phenomenal. KK Downing, it's like, he was in some albums with Judas Priest, like, that weren't very good. And obviously was out of the band, has been out of the band for a long time now. I don't know if it's 11, 12 years, something like that. He's been out for quite a while. And it's really nice to see that he basically found himself musically. KK Downing has lost nothing on his guitar playing. This guy, I mean, the guitar playing on this record is absolutely brilliant. It really is. I have, in listening to this album, I can't find a song I dislike on it. Every song is awesome. KK's playing, he's lost nothing on his guitar playing. This guy can still bring it. And, you've been in the music business for over 50 years doing this at a high level. I can tell you that the guy, that KK and the rest of this band are just, it's phenomenal. And it's great to see. There are some songs on here. I could tell you, I'll tell you what my favorite songs are on this thing. The first thing is The Sons of the Sentinel. The first song is absolutely awesome. One More Shot of Glory. That was one of the singles that they had put out. I still think that song's one of my favorite ones on here. The Sinner Rides Again is great. Reap of the Whirlwind is great. And Strike of the Viper. I mean, those are my favorite songs on this new Judas Priest album. And again, production, songwriting, even the cover, everything about this record is a huge improvement. Now, let me get to the vocal performance of one Tim Ripper Owens, because I was talking about this with somebody yesterday. We were talking about, who are the singers in metal that have just been consistent? Guys that have really lost nothing on their voice over the last, say, 30 or 40 years, right? And the first two guys that I came up with, it was Ralph Scheepers and Tim Ripper Owens. And neither one of these guys have really lost anything in their voice. Tim's performances and his performances, not only live, but in the studio, his voice has lost nothing. Like a lot of singers will kind of lose a little bit of their voice. And a lot of these guys also don't take care of themselves. But like, for example, Tim and even let's say Ralph Shapers, for example. I mean, these guys, you can tell, take care of their bodies, they take care of their voice, and it shows, right? I mean, look at the new Primal Fear album. Ralph Shapers has lost nothing. Ralph Shapers, if you look at him, he looks like the Hulk. I mean, the dude is like ripped. Like that dude hits the gym big time. And Tim, it's the same thing, man. I mean, he's not ripped like Ralph Shapers is, but again, you take care of yourself, you take care of your voice, and man, it's like, the Ripper EP that came out earlier in the year, it was album of the month on this show, actually. Tim's lost nothing on his voice, man. His performance, I'm going to be honest with you. If you haven't heard anything off of this record or haven't heard it, I'm going to tell you need to buy it. I think, in all honesty, this is the best individual performance that Tim Ripper Owens has ever recorded. I will flat out say that. I'm a singer. I sort of get it in a sense, but and I'm not saying that because this is a new album, I'm trying to promote these guys. I can be honest with you. I think this is his best performance, and if it's not his best performance, it's one of them. Like I don't really count the 3 Tremors because there's 3 singers on that, but I'm talking about individual performance from a vocalist. I think this is Tim's best album. And I never thought I would say that. But when I thought about this the other day, I went back and started listening to stuff he sang on. I was listening to Jugulator. I listened to some of the stuff he did in Iced Earth. I listened to Beyond Fear. I listened to Charred Walls of the Damned. I was listening to all of these bands, even the newest Ripper EP, which I think is great. This album, this is almost like an album Judas Priest should have put out, right? It is just, everything about it is phenomenal. But Tim and his vocal performance, in my opinion, his best vocal performance, period. This is an album that's candidate for album of the year for me, for the show. I would say that it's a very strong top 5 album for me this year. I mean, it is that good. And I found myself listening to this record quite a bit, nonstop almost. But the whole band in general, not just, KK and Tim, the entire band is very, very good. I mean, they sound really tight on this. I've seen some clips, I think, from some of the live shows. They look really, really good. This is a great band. I hope this KK's Priest thing continues. And I would hope that they get more gigs, they tour more, and that maybe Tim sort of makes this like his main band, him and KK Downing. I mean, look, they had musical chemistry in Priest, right? I mean, I liked Jugulator. I thought Jugulator was a good album. Demolition, maybe not as much, but if you listen to the live albums, I saw Judas Priest live with Tim singing, and they definitely had that musical chemistry together. So KK's Priest, The Sinner Rides Again. I definitely recommend this release. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. And it's a phenomenal record. I mean, go out and get it. So now on to other things. And this is a sort of a rant on the Rock Hall, which I pretty much despise for the most part, and the band sort of trying to erase Tim from their history. So it's been all over the media over the last year or so. I've seen various headlines and I've listened to various interviews with Tim Ripper Owens about this, and it was talking about how he was snubbed from being inducted into the Rock Hall with the band. Now, for those of you that don't know, Judas Priest was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The band plus 3 former members were inducted into the Rock Hall. So the current members of the band that were inducted, I'll break this down for you a little bit. Scott Travis, the drummer, Ian Hill, Glenn Tipton, and Rob Halford. Richie Faulkner, the other guitar player, wasn't, Although I will say that he should have been, because again, the guy has been in the band for almost 11 years now, if not maybe longer than that. And he is a very talented guitar player. He really is. He deserves to go in. That's my opinion anyway. But that's not why I'm here. Why I am talking about this is that it's been a point of contention in a lot of interviews. Okay. And there was a recent interview, actually, Chris Aiken from Chris Aiken Presents and the Classic Metal Show had a really good interview with Tim Ripper Owens. I was able to catch that interview, and he shredded the Rock Hall, right? Nobody from the band acknowledged him on stage or called him or anything. And the Rock Hall didn't induct him in with the band. And you have a lot of fans saying, oh, Tim wouldn't have a career if it weren't for Priest. And basically they were bashing Tim. There's a big Tim Ripper Owens bashing extravaganza in a lot of the comments when some of these headlines had come out. But I'm here to tell you flat out right now that it is absolutely ridiculous. Number one, that the Rock Hall wouldn't acknowledge Tim. And again, it's one of the reasons I don't give the Rock Hall any credibility. And number two, that the band did not acknowledge him. So let's break this down a little bit, because the three former members of the band who were inducted, I'm going to talk about that here in a second, because when I get into that, you're going to understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. But anyhow, the three former members that were inducted into the Rock Hall from Judas Priest. KK Downing, completely understandably so. I mean, again, you got that trifecta of songwriters, right? Downing, Halford, and Tipton. That's like legendary. It's kind of hard, even though the management probably hates him because of his book and him calling them out in his book. The bottom line is that it's really hard to not induct him in with the band. He was such a mainstay in that band for so many decades. So they have to induct him, right? Then we get to the other two guys. Les Binks, the former drummer of Judas Priest. And a lot of you out there are like, who? Who is Les Binks? Well, Les Binks played on a couple albums. I believe Stained Class and Killing Machine. And then he was a drummer on Unleashed in the East. He was in the band 2 years. 2 years this guy was in the band. Okay? Les Binks. Most Judas Priest fans probably have no clue who this guy even is. I completely forgot he even existed. Aside from Scott Travis, most fans pretty much don't care who the drummer was. Scott Travis is different because that guy is miles ahead as a talent over any drummer they had previously. Okay? Les Binks gets inducted. They don't induct Richie Faulkner, who's been in the band for close to 11 years, but they induct Les Binks. Okay? The next guy that was inducted with Judas Priest into the Hall of Fame, he has since passed away, is drummer Dave Holland. Now, Dave Holland played on some of the most influential releases that the band had ever put out. He was on British Steel. He played on like Defenders of the Faith and Scream for Vengeance, and pretty much he was in the band for close to 10 years. And you know what Dave Holland is also known for? Being convicted of sexually assaulting a handicapped teenager. That's what he's known for. So a guy that really contributes nothing to the songwriting. He was a drummer, and he is a convicted felon for sexually assaulting a handicapped kid. He's in the Rock Hall. So let me get this straight. Number one, you have a guy that was in the band for 2 years that most people don't remember or couldn't care less about. And then you induct a drummer who is a convicted sex offender, and really, I mean, he might have played drums on some of these bigger albums, but did he really write any songs? Not really, right? And you don't induct Tim Ripper Owens. So, number one, that's absolutely ridiculous. You know, for all of you that are angry Tim isn't in, you know what your first problem is? The fact that you're giving the Rock Hall enough credibility to care. Now, I am only talking about this because a lot of you care about this. Again, as I have said in the past, the real Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is your music library. Not some trash corporate entity with a fancy glass building. It's your music library. So you shouldn't even care about the Rock Hall. You should not care. Because it is and I'll repeat this, it is a trash entity. A garbage political corporate entity. Now, I have another video where I ranted about this, but let's be clear. That is your first problem. The second thing is, let's go. Tim Ripper Owens was in the band, I believe, close to 10 years. He sang on 2 albums. Jugulator, which, by the way, Judas Priest was nominated for a Grammy with the song Bullet Train. I'd just like to throw that out there because Tim was singing in the band when that happened. I don't remember Les Binks getting nominated for a Grammy. You know, the guy that most people forgot about that somehow gets inducted in the band for 2 years. Tim was in the band close to 10 years. And he sang on 2 live albums. Live Meltdown 98 and Live in London, both of which were phenomenal. Okay? And when you have songs like Jugulator, Cathedral Spires, Bullet Train, you know, these songs are phenomenal. Now, did Tim do a lot of songwriting with Priest? No. But did Dave Holland, who was in the band about 10 years? No. He went to jail. He played drums on these albums, but did he really write any songs? No. I mean, hell, think about it. Think about it like this. Ian Hill, how much did he write? I mean, the very early days, maybe on Rock-a-Rolla, and maybe on some of the first 2 or 3 albums he might have. But has he really written much? I mean, he's just kind of been there, right? How much did Les Binks write? I mean, I'm sure maybe he's got a couple songwriting credits. I think he does. But he was in the band 2 years. So you were telling me that a guy like Tim, who not only was in the band when they got nominated for a Grammy, they got nominated for that Grammy Award in a time when heavy metal was really uncool. The metal scene was in a very, very bad state. Heavy metal, a band like Judas Priest, was basically frowned upon back in those days. You know, people seem to forget in America that metal was pretty much considered dead. You know, God forbid you played a guitar solo in a song because grunge had taken over. So they were nominated for a Grammy. A replacement singer who replaced a legendary guy like Rob Halford is in this band. They get nominated for a Grammy. He was in the band for close to 10 years, sang on 2 live albums, and then sang on 2 studio albums. And you mean to tell me you can't induct him? But you can induct a band and a guy from the band, that a former member that nobody knows about, and Les Binks, and a convicted sex offender that really didn't write any songs. You could put them in, but you can't put Tim in? Really? That is how stupid the Rock Hall is. And to make matters even worse, shame on the band and their management for not even acknowledging Tim's existence. Like, you know, bands will go up there and give shout outs to guys that helped contribute to them. I mean, hell, even Metallica invited Dave Mustaine to the Rock Hall ceremony when they were inducted. And there was a feud for decades with him, probably still is. But that's a whole different story. But they invited Dave Mustaine, who didn't even play on an official release. I mean, he might have been on some of the demos. But they invited Dave Mustaine and acknowledged him, right? But Judas Priest can't acknowledge Tim Ripper Owens. Again, a guy who sang on 2 studio albums, 2 live albums, and they were nominated for a Grammy Award while Tim was in the band. You can't acknowledge this guy. You can't even say, hey, we want to give a special thanks to Tim, who came into the band at a very dark time. That is, number one, is very classless. Not only on behalf of the band and the management. And I know there have been interviews where Tim says, hey, I'm still friends with these guys. I don't care. And for the record, let me just tell you, even though I am from the Cleveland area, I don't know Tim that well. I've met him once. He's been on my radio show a couple times. But it's not like I've known this guy, or I'm best friends with this guy, or I've known this guy for years, or I talk to him every day. I don't. I just call things as I see them. The Rock Hall, the guys in Priest, and the management are completely classless for not acknowledging this guy. And for those of you that give the Rock Hall some kind of credibility, keep in mind how stupid this is. Again, two members nobody really cares about, and a guy that contributed to the band more than those two guys did, in my opinion. Let's be honest. Les Binks played drums on a couple albums. Great. And if you want him to be in, that's fine. I have no problem with those guys being in the hall. I'm just saying, if you're going to put those guys in, why can't you put Tim in? And better yet, why don't you put Richie Faulkner in? Now, to their credit, Judas Priest did something a lot of legacy bands typically don't do. Right? A lot of these legacy bands, I'll be honest with you, they have like this ego thing going on where they think they can produce their own albums, and the albums don't sound very good. But Priest said, you know what? We're going to make a really good sounding album. Then they came out with Firepower. Great production. Andy Sneap was brought in as guitar player and produced the album because of Glenn's unfortunate circumstances. So to their credit, right, they went and did that. But this snub of Tim Ripper Owens is absolutely classless. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's stupid. And if you wonder why a band like Iron Maiden is succeeding at a level that they are succeeding at, it's because they don't do this kind of stuff. Like, think about this for a minute. A lot of people don't like the Blaze Bayley era of Iron Maiden, which I don't personally, but they still play songs from that era. They still acknowledge that Blaze Bayley existed. Hell, they went and helped pay for Paul Di'Anno's hospital bills. And of course, they market themselves well, and Iron Maiden is seeing a lot more success than Priest is these days. It's because of good management, and the guys in Maiden, I've met them, I've spoken to them, they've been on my radio show in the past. They're just phenomenal guys. Priest and their management, in my opinion, they're classless. You don't want to acknowledge Tim, fine, but I'll tell you what. This album here, Firepower might have a great production, but this album here blows anything Judas Priest has done, blows anything away Priest has done, probably since Painkiller. At least that's my opinion. No disrespect to Jugulator, Tim, but I thought it was a pretty solid release. I think what you're doing now is a lot better. But essentially, that is what has happened. So, folks, I'm going to be honest with you. I know Tim shredded the Rock Hall. I mean, there were there's quite a few interviews actually where he talks about it. But to be honest with you, it's absolutely ridiculous that this guy was not inducted with the band. If you're going to put Les Binks and Dave Holland into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you should put Tim Ripper Owens into the Rock Hall with them. That's how it is. Now, for those of you that are haters and say, well, Tim wouldn't have a career for Priest, hey, you're probably correct. That does not change what I said. It does not change the fact that if you're going to put two guys in who didn't really contribute as much to the band as Tim Ripper Owens did, then you should put Tim in. But that is, of course, the stupidity of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the stupidity of the management, whoever manages Judas Priest, I don't even know. But the fact you don't even acknowledge this guy just shows how low of a character group of people that is. That is how low of a character all of you are, as far as their management and as far as the band goes. That's where we are, folks. With that being said, to end this off, again, buy this album. It is phenomenal. KK's Priest, The Sinner Rides Again, out now. Thanks for watching. If you like what you see on this podcast and what you hear, of course, hit the subscribe button, like this video, share this video, and of course, leave a comment. I want to know what you think.